Steve, the FBI says that shooting that happened behind me, they believe it's gang-related. The FBI special agent in charge says this is what happens to innocent people when criminals battle it out on Portland streets.
Makayla Harris was the 53rd victim in what's become the most deadly year in Portland's history. FBI agents say she was simply a bystander in the middle of a shootout between two groups of people in downtown Portland in July. Her killing is one of about 35 that remains unsolved this year. Law enforcers hope this $25,000 reward encourages someone to share what they know. Investigators are confident people have that information. This is one of several shooting cases in Portland that federal agencies are working on. FBI Special Agent in Charge Karen Ramsey says the Metro Safe Streets Task Force looks at all shootings and sees which ones are connected to others. It focuses on crimes agents believe are connected to gangs or groups of people. The collective group of federal and local law enforcement officers is under pressure to stem the violence in Portland. Here's Ramsey on that urgency.
We're operating with this sense of urgency, the sense of urgency that we've got to turn the tide on this huge historic wave of violence that Portland's seeing. You know, we're keep looking at these milestones in terms of number of shootings and number of homicides. You know, now we're past the numbers game and just have to recognize we're in a crisis period. We've been saying that for a while, but if you can't see that now, I don't know what it's going to take to see that.
Ramsey says in Harris's case, every single person shot was just an innocent bystander trying to enjoy a night out.
This reward is available now. The FBI is looking for people who may have witnessed the shooting, also businesses that might have video of it. You can give those tips by phone or email. Live in downtown Portland, right, Gazaway, K2 News.
Hopefully they can get some information, right? Thank you. Makayla's mother, Felicia Martinez, says that her daughter's death was senseless, asking for anyone to come forward who has information. She says that she knows that someone is out there who knows who did this and is asking them to do the right thing and hold them accountable. In a statement, she spoke directly to her daughter's killer, saying, quote, "To the coward who took my baby from me, you will pay for what you did because I will never stop fighting for my baby girl."
Yes, I have. Just after that heat wave, we were able to confirm that 2 people inside of the Heights at the Columbia Knoll did die from the heat wave. And we were here talking to residents who painted a pretty scary and terrible conditions inside during that heat wave. We've now learned that one of those 2 victims that day was 81-year-old Charlotte Iverson, and her son is now suing this senior living facility on her behalf.
The heat was unbearable that final week of June. Reaching 117 degrees, it proved too much for dozens who died that day. Many living in homes without air conditioning.
You're just numb. It's nothing you prepare for. You know, she was in fine health, and it was a real shock.
Royce Iverson's 81-year-old mom was one of 2 people who died at the Heights at the Columbia Knoll in Northeast Portland. We were here just over 3 months ago when a resident told me just how bad the conditions were.
It's like you're on fire.
Those same concerns echoed in a lawsuit filed this week on behalf of Charlotte Iverson, saying in part, air conditioning at the Heights failed, making it intolerably hot, sometimes 98 to 100 degrees indoors. Charlotte was found in her room with no air conditioner.
The medical examiner told me that she died an excruciatingly painful death.
Up until her death, Royce traveled monthly to see his mom for a week at a time. Their relationship was as close as it had ever been. But now, those memories are all he has left.
Oh, they're priceless. You know, not knowing what was going to happen, to me, they're invaluable.
In a situation that was utterly preventable.
Royce's lawyer, Kristen McCall, says this is about more than money. And while it will never bring Charlotte back, she says their hope is to prevent this from happening to any other family.
Yeah, no amount of money can change this, but it's about accountability and awareness.
Now, I did reach out to the owner of the Heights at the Columbia Knoll, and I spoke with them actually back in July, just after that heat wave, bringing those concerns of the residents that I spoke to before to him, which he said he was going to be looking into. Today, when I reached out, I still haven't heard back.
So since 2014, the city of Portland has entered into a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice related to use of force against people with mental illness. So earlier this year, the city was found to be out of compliance with that settlement agreement. So the parties are in mediation right now to figure out how to remedy that issue. And so one of the remedies that's been proposed is to implement body cameras for PPP officers. So now you have, the Department of Justice effectively stepping in and saying, hey, we also think body cameras would be an important tool for Portland police officers to have.
We know Commissioner Joanne Hardesty has opposed body cams in the past. Do we know what changed her mind on this issue?
My understanding is that it has to do with the advancements in body camera technology, as well as being able now to draw on best practices from other police departments about body cameras, since there's a lot of little details in body camera policy that can kind of, become the sticking points. So my understanding is Commissioner Hardesty is more on board now because we can draw on best practices that have been developed over the last few years.
There's still some sticking points in this over when we talk about all the negotiations taking place, like whether officers will be allowed to pre-review the footage, right?
Yeah, so pre-review is one of those sort of hot topics with body cameras. And what that means is that an officer would be allowed to review their body camera footage before writing a police report, for example. So some critics say that that would give police the ability to kind of retroactively justify their actions. But advocates of pre-review say, it just helps police paint the most accurate picture possible of what happened when they're writing police reports. So there's a lot of tension about how that exactly should be worked out policy-wise.
We know that body cams aren't cheap, particularly the hard drives that are needed to store the footage. Do we know yet where the funding is going to come from, Tess, on this, and how much they're going to cost?
So the mayor's office says their estimate right now is $2.6 million for the purchase of body cameras. And that doesn't include the implementation costs necessarily. But that's still kind of a rough estimate. And this could be voted on by the end of the year by City Council. They have the fall budget monitoring process coming up soon where that could take place. So we have a rough estimate of the cost and the potential estimate of the time frame for approving that, but that's about as much as we know at this point.
Well, it's not a quick fix, but it will take some time, and they do believe that it will work. The goal is to re-educate some of the community that there are more options out there for healthcare other than just 911. The landscape of Portland is changing. The population is growing for both the housed and the unhoused. That growth has led to a larger need for police, fire, and EMTs.
And right now, we're in a humanitarian disaster.
Chief Sarah Boone with Portland Fire and Rescue says the city that is growing and changing has been using an emergency infrastructure that has not.
And this really is looking at legacy systems that no longer serve us well today.
That's where CHAT comes in. CHAT stands for Community Health Assess and Treat, thanks to a new grant from Care Oregon, approved by the Portland City Council today. They will hit the streets next month in teams of 2. They will handle smaller medical calls with the goal of not only helping, but educating.
There's a lot of times community members, when they don't know how to access healthcare services, when they don't have access to a primary care physician, when they just don't understand the health system, they will call 911.
That's why Portland Fire and Rescue says they will teach people other places to get help in hopes of avoiding the need for ambulances or even putting more pressure on hospitals.
This partnership, what it really is it's us partnering with a health system, Care Oregon in this instance, and saying, how can we really meet the needs of our population so they're, number one, better served and their health outcomes are improved.
Okay, so this might sound a little bit familiar to you, and you might be wondering, is CHAT and the Portland Street Response the same thing? Well, we asked that question for you today, and they are not. First of all, they are both separately funded. Second of all, Portland Street Response is more focused on mental health crises, whereas Chat, as you just heard, is more focused on those smaller medical calls. Both are going to be a great asset to the city, is what city leaders are hoping for and saying. Both are also in a pilot program, which they expect to make a decision on next year.